In Argentina, President Javier Milei announced that the government will receive at least $20 billion from the International Monetary Fund. In France, the leaders of 30 countries gathered for a summit on Ukraine's security where they opposed to the lifting of anti-Russian sanctions. And the Palestinian Liberation Organization rejected Israel's intention to create a body to push for the forced displacement of the population in the Gaza Strip. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Caracas, Venezuela. We'll begin with the news. Stay with us. In Argentina, President Javier Milei announced that the government will receive at least $20 billion from the International Monetary Fund. Economy Minister Luis Caputo said that the loan will be provided through the new agreement with the IMF to be signed in the next few weeks. Caputo also assured that with the agreement, it is expected that the Argentine Central Bank's gross reserves will increase to approximately $50 billion. Media reports indicate that the minister did not specify how much of these funds will be destined to cancel the first installments of the program closed in 2022, and how much will be destined to cancel non-transferable central bank bills held by the Treasury. In Paraguay, representatives of the Farmers' Federation rallied to demand agrarian reform under the slogan "For land, production, and against all injustice." Farmers and indigenous unions participated in the 31st National March to demand more measures from the national government in the areas of agrarian reform, land distribution, and increased support to farmers. The rural working families denounced the government for promoting policies detrimental to agricultural production. Demonstrators called for the enactment of an agrarian reform law as established in the country's constitution.
Y en esta jornada se reactivó el sistema teleférico urbano en Mérida, una inversión cuantiosa en medio de bloqueos, sanciones, hemos perdido el 99% de los recursos y se siguen realizando obras, reconstruyendo.
In Ecuador, at least 200,000 people were left without drinking water and lost their fishing source after the March 13th incident in the province of Esmeraldas, considered the worst oil spill in the history of the country. The environmental situation has been aggravated by the collapse due to the rains of a contention dam on Tuesday, which the state-owned company Petroecuador reported helped contain the more than 25,000 barrels of oil spilled after the disaster. In this regard, Petroecuador informed that 7 containment barriers were installed in the Vicha River to tackle the dam collapse, where machinery was removing oil-contaminated debris. In addition, the company reported that extra absorbent material was being placed in Vicha as well as in the Capele and Esmeraldas rivers. In Ecuador, health authorities warned that heavy rains have increased the risk of diseases, among them acute gastrointestinal and respiratory ailments. In addition, the meteorological conditions have elevated the rates of infections and diseases caused by insect bites. In this regard, it was reported that the provinces of Napo, Guayas, Manabí, and Orellana face more than 10,000 reported cases of dengue, as Manabí and Guayas have the most incidents of infection of pulmonary mycosis affecting older adults, according to official statistics. Meanwhile, in Bolivia, more than 368,000 families have been affected and 99 municipalities are in a state of disaster due to the emergency that the country is going through with heavy rains. According to official reports, 818 affected families have lost their homes due to rains, floods, landslides, and overflowing rivers. The forecast of the Meteorological and Hydrological Service activated the red alert for almost the entire country until April 5, 2025, due to the risk of floods and overflowing rivers. The declaration of a national state of emergency by the government makes it possible to speed up the response to disasters, to manage external financial resources, to draw up the post-flood plan, and to mobilize more technical, logistical, and economic resources in the affected areas. And work continues to contain wildfires raging in South Korea that have left at least 28 dead, 32 injured, and thousands evacuated in a week. The fires have been catalogued as the worst in the country's history, and as a measure, the government declared a state of national disaster. The flames have devastated more than 36,000 hectares, and several helicopters are still dropping water on the areas due to the strong winds and dry weather that spread the fire. In addition, authorities have evacuated 37,185 people, some 190 kilometers southeast of Seoul, while another 16,700 are in temporary shelters. In this context, scientists alert that global warming is making this weather phenomenon more extreme every year. And on Thursday, the president of Mexico, Claudia Sheinbaum, mentioned that her administration will give a comprehensive response to U.S. tariffs and assures she will always protect Mexico, the jobs generated in the country, and its companies.
Lo primero que tiene que saber el pueblo de México es que nosotros siempre vamos a proteger.
The first thing the people of Mexico need to know is that we are always going to protect Mexico.
Nosotros tenemos que defender los empleos
That is our
que se generan
responsibility.
en México, los empleos que existen, y a las empresas mexicanas
We have to
también.
defend the jobs that are generated in Mexico, the jobs that exist, and the Mexican companies as well. This is part of our fundamental work in the development of the country and in the relationship with the government of the United States, and always with the principle of sovereignty of our country, of defending the sovereignty of our country.
De defensa de la soberanía de nuestro país. Ahora,
Now, of course, within the trade agreement, Mexico, United States, Canada, there should be no barriers. That is the essence of the trade agreement.
Esa es la esencia del tratado comercial.
And U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio landed on Thursday in Georgetown, Guyana, as part of his two-day Caribbean tour aimed at further restricting the Cuban humanitarian mission, attacking Venezuela's energy sovereignty, and reducing China's commercial presence in the region. According to the State Department, during the visit, Rubio is expected to sign a memorandum of understanding that outlines security cooperation, offering to put the nation under the U.S. security umbrella. In this regard, Guyanese President Irfan Ali has embraced closer defense cooperation with the Western country, including through joint maritime patrols. Rubio is flying to Guyana after visiting Jamaica on Wednesday, will also stop later Thursday in neighbor Suriname. We now have a first break coming up. Remember, you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English. Don't go away. We're going to be right back. Welcome back. In France, the leaders of 30 of Ukraine's allied countries met in Paris for a summit aimed at boosting the regime's security. French President Emmanuel Macron said that the time has not yet come to lift anti-Russian sanctions. At the same time, the French president pointed out that the European Union has no legal basis for seizing frozen Russian assets. For his part, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer urged to strengthen sanctions against Russia, adding that the session focused on the determination to support Kiev, including plans for military operations on land, in the air, or at sea. Following consultations between Russia and the U.S. in Riyadh, the Kremlin announced an agreement on the implementation of the Black Sea Initiative, including measures to ensure the safety of navigation. The agreements on the Black Sea will take effect once sanctions on Russian banks, facilitating trade in agricultural products and mineral fertilizers, are lifted. And Russia's foreign ministry denounced the escalation of persecution by the Kiev regime against Russian journalists. Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova denounced that war correspondents are being persecuted by Ukrainian paramilitaries and attacked with Western weapons, and invited organizations such as UNESCO, the UN Office for Human Rights, and others to take measures against such crimes. In this context, the Foreign Ministry declared that the murder of Russian journalists in the Russian region of Lugansk is part of the systematic and consistent actions of Kiev to silence the press media. Meanwhile, in Egypt on Thursday, 6 people were killed when a tourist submarine sank off the coast of Hurghada along the Red Sea. The Russian embassy in Cairo confirmed the news, as some nationals are among the victims. While the causes for the incident are still under investigation, it was reported that the teleSUR escape crashed at about 10 a.m. local time, carrying 45 people, among them minors, in addition to crew members, most of which were rescued and taken to the hospital in the touristic city. The Sinbad submarine was on a trip to explore the Red Sea's coral reefs and marine life, a crucial activity for Egypt's tourism industry, in which Russian foreigners play an increasingly large part. And the Polish government has suspended the right of migrants to apply for asylum in order to protect the country's borders. Polish President Andrzej Duda has signed the asylum law that will come into force to strengthen the security of the country's borders. In this sense, he encouraged Prime Minister Donald Tusk to activate the necessary measures so that undocumented migrants who manage to enter the country through the border cannot apply for asylum. These measures are being taken in view of the pressure of migrants on Poland's eastern borders, which it shares with Ukraine and Belarus. And Indonesian security forces repressed protests against parliament's approval of military reform. Hundreds of citizens took to the streets as the new military law came into effect, considering it a threat to the country's democratic system. The riot police used water cannons against demonstrators who gathered in the streets of the city of Jakarta. Previously, the Indonesian parliament unanimously approved the amendment to the military legal regulations and expanded the participation of active and retired officers to have a greater non-combat activity in the nation's public institutions. And the head of Sudan's armed forces, Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, declared that Khartoum is free, hours after his forces recaptured the city's airport from the paramilitary-backed forces. After touring the airport, the army chief spoke on Wednesday from the presidential palace, which government forces recaptured on Friday after almost 2 years of war in which it was in the hands of their paramilitary rapid support forces. According to local media, they are still in control of most of the Darfur region and other areas of the country. The war that began in April 2023 has left more than 60,000 people dead, around 12 million displaced, while more than half of its population faces high levels of acute hunger, and basic services have collapsed. And on Wednesday evening, a crowd celebrated the liberation of Khartoum in the city of Port Sudan. Hundreds of thousands of Sudanese have fled to this locality since the beginning of the war. The liberation of the capital, besides being a symbolic triumph, means the possible return of government institutions that were moved to Port Sudan after the first month of the conflict. In this context, many of the demonstrators expressed their intention to return to Khartoum as soon as possible.
It is a moment of joy, an indescribable moment, after 2 years of suffering and displacement due to this brutal war, imposed on the Sudanese people by a group that caused the loss of the rights of the people and the nation.
Now we have our second and final short break coming up. Before, as always, we invite you to visit our Facebook page at teleSUR English. A short break and we'll be right back. Welcome back. The Palestinian Liberation Organization rejected Israel's intentions to create a body to push for the forced displacement of the population in the Gaza Strip. The resistance organization qualified this project as a war crime in clear violation of international humanitarian law. In addition, it reiterated its denunciation of the constant threat of bombing, which exacerbates the famine and destruction of the Palestinian territory by the action of the troops of the Tel Aviv regime. Furthermore, the organization affirmed that statements on voluntary migration are a smokescreen to deceive the international community and avoid the accountability of the Israeli authorities. In Palestine, at least 22 people were killed on Thursday by Israeli attacks against different areas of the Gaza Strip. The occupation army bombings took place overnight and on Thursday morning, hitting residential buildings and tents sheltering displaced persons. According to the Wafa news agency, 7 people were killed after an airstrike on their home in Bet Lahaya city. Another attack claimed the lives of 7 others in northwestern Gaza City. Continued artillery attacks were also reported in western Rafah and north of the Nusayrat camp. And in Palestine, local sources confirmed that the Israeli bombing that took place early Thursday morning killed the spokesman of the Hamas resistance movement, Abdel Latif al-Qanu. According to information provided by Hamas, the spokesman was in his tent in the Jabalia al-Balad refugee camp at the time he was attacked. This attack comes days after the targeted killing of 2 prominent members of the Hamas political bureau, Ismail Barhum and Salah al-Bardawil. With this latest assault, the Zionist regime of Israel has caused the death of at least 11 members of the political bureau of the Palestinian resistance, in addition to raising the number of Palestinian martyrs in Gaza to more than 50,000. And this Thursday, more than 3,000 ships of the Iranian Navy held a parade in support of the Palestinian people and the resistance in the Gaza Strip. Naval parades were held in the waters of the Caspian Sea, the Persian Gulf, and the Sea of Oman in support of the Palestinian people and the Gaza Strip on the eve of World Al-Quds Day. In this exercise, in addition to Palestinian flag, the flags of the Israeli regime was also set on fire in the heart of the Persian Gulf. According to the Iranian authorities, the parade was carried out jointly with Lebanon, Iraq, and Yemen and included 3,000 boats. And in Uruguay, the coordinator for the Palestine gathered near the foreign ministry to deliver a letter demanding that the Uruguayan state condemn the genocide perpetrated by Israel against the Palestinian people. The document, which was delivered to the Uruguayan foreign minister Mario Lubetkin, demands that the government of Yamandu Orsi publicly denounce the Israeli genocide that has claimed the lives of more than 50,000 Palestinian civilians since the beginning of the latest Zionist offensive on October 7, 2023. Demonstrators asked for a firm stance of Uruguayan state against Israel's aggressions and for actions in solidarity with the Palestinian people. And Gemini forces confirmed an attack on U.S. aircraft carrier Harry S. Truman in response to Western aggressions against the country. This way, the Yemeni defense launched a joint military operation targeting U.S. ships in the Red Sea with a series of ballistic missiles and drones. They added that the results of the engagement and counterattack operations include thwarting Washington's attempts to advance its warships in the region. Furthermore, they assured that they will continue to support the Palestinians until the aggression stops and the siege is lifted. Meanwhile, in Syria, humanitarian organizations revealed the killing of over 2,246 Syrians in 25 registered massacres along the country's coast. Organizations point out that most of the victims killed by military forces aligned with al-Golani are young people. In this regard, they point out that there are at least 811 videos as evidence of the facts. On the other hand, the coastal regions, they report growing tensions and clashes between security forces and the de facto government, causing the death of dozens of civilians. And in Mexico, Puebla celebrates World Theater Day with a marathon that will include 27 performances by 15 national and international companies. The director of the Municipal Institute of Art and Culture of Puebla, Anel Nochebuena, announced that from March 26th to the 30th, people can enjoy free plays in Puebla de Zaragoza, where acting workshops will also be offered at an additional cost. The City Theater, the Construarte Cultural Center, El Zócalo, and the Popular Autonomous University of the State of Puebla are among the venues that will host the presentations. In this opportunity, the billboard will include plays such as Blind Love Love, Little Red Riding Hood and the Big Bad Wolf, The Little Lost Lion, and the Scala di Zeta. Like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. Remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at teleSUR English, and also remember to join us on our social media. For teleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.